I have the idea of what I want to bet, and then after I get your insight, then I kind of narrow it down.
Yeah, I try to narrow
it. 3 or 4.
Just talking about them helps narrow it down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the final round. I'm joined, as always, by the #1 MMA odds world in the entire world, Mr. Matthew Holt, and we are very proud to announce that we've been keeping track this year, and our accounts have grown 46%.
Yeah, it's been a great start, and another good week last week. The Bellator totals, the UFC sides, most of those getting home. So yeah, we've been red hot lately.
Even though last week we didn't have a show, me and Matt were still
the last
hot.
show we did. Yeah, the last show we did.
But
I forgot, yeah.
No, I know last week I did all right too. So, but yeah, we're just saying accounts have grown 46% on the shows we have covered. So our personal accounts.
Look, the 500 we started with.
More.
Yeah, the 500 I started with for everyone who made all those bets. The exact same ones I did. We started with just $500. We're up to $705.
Woo! All right, big UFC fight night from Belém, Brazil. In the main event, none other than Belém's most beloved son, Mr. Lyoto Machida, but he's got his hands full with the young, hungry, tough, up-and-comer, former Alabama linebacker, Eric Anders. And right now, Anders, huge favorite at -270. Lyoto Machida's been stopped in his last 3 fights, but they were against the top of the division. Guys like Rockhold, Yoel Romero, and Derek Brunson.
Yeah, this is an interesting fight. What's interesting about this fight is Eric Anders called for this fight. He actually got the win in his last fight, and in the post-fight press conference called out Lyoto Machida in Brazil and got it. Lyoto said, sure, come on down. There's something about this fight that I think it makes you feel like if this was Lyoto 5 years ago, you could envision Eric Anders running into a Lyoto shot.
Yeah.
A perfectly timed kick or punch, straight punch down the middle.
But at nearly 40 years old.
And Lyoto struggles with southpaws a little.
Yeah, look at, his losses. Rockhold, Romero, Derek Brunson, all southpaws.
And here's another southpaw against them. Yeah. And I think maybe Anders noticed that this is a guy who struggles with southpaws. And at some point you worry about guys getting called, what we call in this industry chinny. And look at, this is the one thing that makes...
I wouldn't call him chinny because Brunson knocks everyone out in the first round. Once he learned how to bomb, you see that took a couple UFC fights till he really got comfortable. Then he started knocking, I think he counted like 7 or 8 first round knockouts. Like first 2-minute knockouts.
But what also makes me nervous about Machida is Rockhold and Romero, when they got him on the ground, basically he was done. Yeah. This is supposed to be a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in Lyoto Machida.
But physically, he's just not that strong. And Eric Anders is really strong.
Yeah. But I think, look, I'm going to make a small play. It's going to be my smallest play of the entire card on this one. We got $705. I'm going to risk 40 of it on the over 2.5 rounds, plus 160. That's what it is currently here at the Palms. 40 to make $64, that this one makes it halfway through the 3rd round. To your point, you talked me into it earlier. I think that Anders knows he can't come out slugging against Machida because that's the only way Machida can win.
When you chase him and get a little wild, then you run into one of those straights. He draws you in like that. And Eric Anders, if first 5-rounder in the UFC, expect him to be a little cautious that first round. Yeah. Machida's always cautious the 3rd round. And even if Eric Anders does have a good 2nd round, I think Lyoto could weather the storm and make it 2.5 minutes into that 3rd round. And if he does, we win at plus 160.
And I think he's going to give an effort here in front of his hometown fans. Yeah. He knows he doesn't have many fights left, and he doesn't have many big fights left, and this might be his last fight in front of a hometown audience. I think he comes with an effort. I think he comes prepared. I don't want to lay 270 with Anders because he hasn't beaten anybody. Sure, he's bigger, younger, stronger, but technically you don't know if he's there yet.
Even though he's undefeated, he had a 5-rounder outside the UFC go the distance. He does have a good gas tank, but definitely I think the under's the way to play at plus 160, or the over's the way to play at plus 160.
Yeah, I'm going to get on it for a small bet and just hope that, Machida makes it halfway through the fight, basically.
That's right. All right, co-main event, Pedro Munoz facing off against John Dodson. John Dodson has been in there with the cream of the crop. He knocked out TJ Dillashaw, lost a pretty tough competitive fight to Demetrius Johnson. He's fought him twice, lost a split decision to Lineker, another split decision to Sergio Moraes, and fights that I thought could have went his way. And right now, John Dodson's minus 155, and I'm leaning towards him in this fight, but you like Pedro Munoz.
Yeah, and this is going to be my second bet of the fight. I'm going to bet five fights on this card. I'm going to risk $50 to make $68 on Pedro Munoz. There's something about John Dodson that judges don't like. I don't want to argue with it. Judges do not like John Dodson. He outlanded John Lineker in the fight with Lineker. He didn't get the decision there. He's only 2-2 since moving up to 135 pounds.
Yeah.
And the wins are over Manny Gamburian and who was the other win? Eddie Wineland. So, I mean, the losses to Marlon Moraes, the former World Series of Fighting champion.
Yeah, I called him Sergio, yeah.
And I only say that because Sergio Moraes is actually on this card.
Class.
Yeah, Sergio's actually on this card. So it was Marlon Moraes, who former World Series of Fighting champion, really solid guy, top 10 guy for sure, probably a top 5 bantamweight in the world. And then John Lineker, another for surefire top 10 guy, maybe top 5 bantamweight in the world. He lost to both of them. You could make a case that he was certainly in both fights, but A, his style isn't appealing to judges. He never wins close decisions. He doesn't seem to have the power at 135 that he did at 125. In fact, other than Manny Gamburian, who's no longer in the UFC for good reason, Dodson hasn't hurt anyone in these fights. We've seen him land crisp on Moraes, on Lineker, on Wineland, and he's not hurting any of them.
Maybe not hurt him bad, but he did. In the fight with Moraes, he dropped him a couple times. Moraes was able to pop right back up. But, I mean, I think he could still crack. The reason I don't like Munoz is because he's used to being the quicker guy, and when he's the quicker guy, standing up, he doesn't have the best defense. He gets hit. We saw that a couple times. He has good hands, and he's very dangerous with that guillotine, but I'm sure Greg Jackson down there at Albuquerque is going to prepare Dodson not to get caught in that guillotine. I think that's Munoz's only hope of winning, and in a 3-round fight, I think Dodson has a lot better chance of staying out that guillotine. Come on, look at with Rob Font. It looked like Font was handling him, no problem with his hands, and boom, slap that guillotine on. Same thing with Scoggins. In the Scoggins fight, Scoggins is to win that fight, handling Munoz, no problem. Boom, caught in that guillotine, and I think Dodson's he's good at keeping fights close and edging guys out, even though the judges don't like him. I think, hey, if you can have those close fights consistently enough, you're going to get one, and he's due for a split decision to go his way.
Well, I mean, Munoz on the other side has had close fights. A split decision loss to Jimmy Rivera, and a loss to Rafael Assunção, who's a top 3 guy in the bantamweight division. So his losses are only to the elite guys, and he has that momentum going. 4 straight wins.
Yes, he does.
Starting to get going now, including a big win over Rob Font. This is a guy right now who's at the very peak of his career, maybe still moving up. And look, we talk about Jackson Wink and this. They haven't been on their best run lately, but you know who is? American Top Team. And they and we got Munoz training down there at ATT. So if nothing else, look, they both come from great gyms. They're both going to be prepared for what they have to do. At the underdog price of plus 135, I just think we have 2 guys going on different trajectories right now. John Dodson already hit his peak in MMA. I don't think he'll ever get back to where he was, fighting for the flyweight title twice. He's never fighting for a title again.
Well, I think the only reason he went up to 35 wasn't because of the weight cut. It's because he knew, hey, I can't beat Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, and you're never getting another shot after losing twice. Yeah. But it hasn't been the greatest going up. I mean, lost to Lineker, I mean, he's 2-2 at bantamweight with wins over unimpressive. He hasn't shown me he can beat a ranked guy at bantamweight yet. And I think Munoz is a star on the rise.
All right, we're splitting this one. I'm going Dodson at minus 155. Matt likes Munoz at plus 135. But expect this fight to probably go the distance, as
and
both guys are really durable.
Are you plopping your money down on this
one? On this one, yeah. I am. I don't like taking too many favorites, you know, but I think I'll plop a little something on Dodson. I might have to go with 2 favorites in this fight. Maybe even 3, because the next fight up, well, let's get to the girls in a second, but Michael Prazeres is also a -150 favorite. And in your opinion, he's a better -150 favorite than John Dodson, as he's fighting Desmond Greene, who is an outstanding wrestler. He's a taller guy, but he just doesn't have that killer instinct.
Yeah.
In those close fights, he just doesn't go after it. And Michael Prazeres, what's his record? Like 26-2?
Yeah.
This guy knows how to pull out close fights.
I'm going to actually risk $75 to win $50 here on Michael Prazeres at -150. 7-2 in the UFC and on a 5-fight win streak, including the likes of Gilbert Burns, Josh Bergman, Mads Burnell, who got a big win last week. But this guy's really, really solid. His only losses in the lightweight division to Kevin Lee, who just fought for the interim title, and way back to Paulo Thiago.
His first fight at 170.
That's right. But I think this guy's really strong. He's really good. He's figured it out in the UFC now. He's on a big 5-fight win streak, and this is his shot to maybe get in the rankings and get a big guy. And Desmond Greene, there's something, there's always 1 or 2 of those fighters. You see him in every, boxing and UFC. 14 of his 20 wins by decision. That's unheard of in MMA. In MMA, anything less than,
especially in the minor leagues.
That's right. If you have
he's 1-1 in the UFC, so only 2 UFC fights.
Yeah.
But 14 decision wins.
14 decision wins at that level outside the UFC. Normally guys have 70, 80, 90% finish rates in MMA outside the UFC.
And you see that guys outside the UFC finish everyone. Then they come in the UFC and
have decisions.
They have a lot of decisions.
So the fact
but
that
when
you're
having all those outside the UFC.
85% of your wins outside the UFC are by decision. That just shows me you don't have the killer instinct to put this guy away. The people that have given Prazeres trouble in the past are really crisp strikers. I mean, Kevin Lee was really good with his hands in that fight, and then his wrestling was able to negate Prazeres' ground game a little, and he outstruck him bad on the ground. But I just don't know that Desmond Greene has that killer instinct here to really stand in there. And once he gets a takedown, Prazeres is a beast on the ground. I'm going to go ahead and lay the 150. This is a guy who I personally myself underrated a couple years ago and said I'm not sure his striking game is good enough for his all-around game for him to be competitive at the most elite levels in the UFC. 5 wins later, I'm no longer fading him. I'm on him. Minus 150.
Extremely physically strong too as well. He's a specimen. But you're right, I agree. He's probably a better -150 favorite than Dodson. I still like Dodson, and I'm playing Prazeres well. I hate playing all these favorites, but I don't want to pass it up. All right, next up, Valentina Shevchenko fighting Priscilla Cachoeira, who's pretty much a newcomer to the UFC, right? This is her first UFC fight.
Yeah, and you know what we find with a lot of women that we didn't find with Priscilla here is a lot of times because the women's divisions are so thin, whether it's Invicta, UFC, you'll have girls that, hey, it's their UFC debut, but I recognize 7 names they fought in Invicta or in Strikeforce back. And not the case here with Priscilla. She's fought basically regionally in Brazil, 8-0, 4 knockouts, no submissions. She seems to be a banger, kind of on that Betch Correa mold of let's stand and trade.
Yeah, she can crack though. I was watching some of her in action and she throws really wide, sloppy punches. But the one thing she does do that she's going to pay for in this fight is she pulls back with her chin up a lot and keeps bombing. And you get someone, I mean, Valentina Shevchenko, a split decision loss to the champion, Nunes. So she has good fundamentals. Yes, she has good fundamentals in boxing. And if she picks up on that, all she has to do is step in with straight punches and she's going to land on Priscilla Cachoeira. But at -950, I really don't think there's a play here.
No, I can't play -950, and I don't want Cachoeira. But, I mean, when you look at the losses ever for, I mean, the wins that Shevchenko has, Holly Holm, Juliana Pena, Sarah Kaufman.
Good fighters,
Yeah, she's really solid. I mean, she picked apart on the feet Holly Holm in a really impressive performance. She's not always a killer either in her fights, Valentina. If she knows she's beating you, just kickboxing and moving, she'll do it. That's also why I stayed away from the under. I thought, well, you know, this seems like a fight where Valentina should catch her, but she comes sometimes.
Yeah. Agree with you. Really no play here, but next up, the heavyweights, Timothy Johnson, Marcelo Gould. And I like Gould in this fight. He's a minus 170 favorite. I just don't want to go with too many favorites. I was thinking about playing the under. I think Gould is kind of a leaner, quicker, a better puncher version of Junior Albini. You saw what Albini did with Timothy Johnson. He knocked him out in the first round.
A lot more athletic, at least.
Yeah, more athletic.
And
probably doesn't kick as well. Doesn't wear the diaper. And I think, hey, if you're going to play this fight, just lay the wood and take Gould. Or if you don't like the price, then go under. Under's pretty much a pick 'em at minus 105.
I went over this fight 4 times. And the whole mindset for me every time is fade the hot newcomer, fade the hot newcomer, fade that experienced guy. Let me find a reason to get on to Timothy Johnson. I mean, his losses are legit. Jared Ross Holt, Alexander Volkov, Junior Albini, which was the only one that knocked him out. Yeah. So I thought, all right, well, who's he beat? Yeah, he does have a win over Marcin Tybura, which is a fairly impressive win. It's a ranked guy at the bottom of the rankings. So you're like, all right, maybe Timothy Johnson can go. And then you watch Gould. And to your point, he's not Junior Albini. He's ripped. He looks the part, 6'3", 245 pounds, really athletic. He was 5-0 with 5 knockouts coming into the UFC, and known as this big banger. 5-0, 5 KOs, all first round. You're like, wow, let me watch this guy. Then you watch his UFC debut. What does he do? He chokes the guy out and gets a submission.
After he had him hurt some punches, so...
Yeah, he's pretty impressive, and the only thing that scares me is Timothy Johnson's really tall, long, big, and durable.
Heavy.
Yeah, so I don't, there's not a lot of guys that can replicate Timothy Johnson really in his abilities. I'm going to leave it alone. I tried to talk myself onto the underdog, couldn't find a good reason.
What about the under at minus 105? You just think
the problem is Johnson's
too durable? Yeah.
And I worry about what happens with a guy making his, fighting in his home country of Brazil. He's going to be excited. This is his first big card. He comes down there. He goes for the knockout early. Johnson's able to sustain, and I wouldn't be surprised if a little fatigue sets in.
Yeah.
I could see Gould dominating the first round, winning the first 4 minutes of the second round, so he wins the second round, and potentially maybe losing the third round and winning 29-28 if he gasses a little.
That's true.
Because Johnson does have a gas tank. He's a plotter, don't get me wrong. He's slow, he's a plotter, but he's durable.
And I've seen him win like that before, where he gets you up on the cage, uses his weight,
you there,
and slows you down to his speed. All right, a fight that I think is going to be fireworks. Every striker's dream fight. We got Anthony Lionheart Smith versus Thiago Santos. Thiago Santos got a lot of first round finishes, but he is fighting a tough, durable Anthony Smith, who's suffered most of his 12 losses in the first half of his career. He's been pretty hot lately, and this guy is pretty durable. I really am trying to talk myself into playing the under. I like Thiago Santos, but I'm not just going to play that minus 270. The only thing I play is the under, but you're thinking the dog in this fight.
Here's the 4th of my 5 bets on this card. 50 to win $115, plus 230 on Anthony Lionheart Smith. Look, this is one of the most underrated middleweights on the UFC roster right now. This is a guy who was a complete 500 fighter early in his career, completely reckless in the style he fought, that has since gone and got good training and has won 11 of his past 12 fights. Think of the fact that this guy has 12 losses in his career, but he is 11-1 in his last 12, and the only loss
4-1 in the UFC.
Yeah, was to Cesar Ferreira in a really close fight by decision, and he's been in there with some bangers. He's coming off a knockout win over Hector Lombard in his last fight, where Lombard caught him, hit him with a couple of good shots, had him down. Anthony Smith, durable, hung in there, landed the big punches late. And this guy can really crack. He has double-digit KOs and double-digit submission wins. So he's a finisher on the ground. He's a finisher on the feet. Look, I think that Thiago Santos is the more dangerous guy in the first round. But don't get me wrong, both of these guys can knock the other one out with one shot, period. But if it gets out of the first round, I think we're going to have a plus 230 underdog who really is the favorite in the fight after that, because Thiago Santos fades. Anthony Lionheart-Smith tends to come on and get a lot of late stoppages.
He has a good number of late stoppages, including that last fight you were just talking about with Hector Lombard.
Yeah.
And I believe I saw him stop someone else late in that fight too. Yeah, I didn't write it down, but yeah, 3rd round stoppages all the way, man. So yes, I mean that's I was tempted to play the under.
And if it goes to the ground, Smith's the favorite.
Yeah, well, Thiago Santos is purely a banger.
Yeah.
Never looks for the submission, just wants to knock you out. I almost played the under, but due to Anthony Smith's durability, that got me thinking. Me personally, I'm gonna leave this fight alone.
The one thing that makes me nervous about certain guys, and we'll talk about this later with Alcantara, is there's some guys in the UFC, for whatever reason, that tend to get finished when things aren't going their way. Thiago Santos, 4 of his 5 losses he was finished in. He's one of those guys, you get him on his back, you're going to pound him out because he's not getting up. He's not using the extra energy and going to potentially give up his back to try to slide out, or that's it. He's just going to get pounded out, and he's just one of those guys.
Trail syndrome.
Yeah, that's right. I think he has a little bit of that, and I think Anthony Smith, to his name, Lionheart's a really appropriate name. This is a guy who finds a way to stay in fights and bang people out late.
He used to be an underdog. In his last fight, he was a plus 250 dog, and he won that one.
And I had him in that fight,
in the 3rd
too.
round.
Yeah.
So
he's really dangerous. I mean, this is a big, strong guy who has power in both hands and is actually really good. Yeah, and is really good in the scrambles. So I actually really like Anthony Smith here, and at plus 230, I feel like it's a gift price.
All right. Next up, we got Tim Dirty Bird Means facing off against Sergio Moraes. At first, I liked Means in this fight. He's a minus 190 favorite, but then the more I looked at it, Sergio Moraes just finds ways to keep fights close. He's kind of sloppy, dipping his head down a lot, throwing those wild punches, but he's slick submission game. And his record speaks for itself. He's 6-2-1 in the UFC. His only loss is a close decision to Cesar Ferreira, and he got caught by Kamaru Usman in his last fight. But that's a good record for the UFC. Meanwhile, Tim Means 7-4-1 in the UFC. Lost his last one to Belal Muhammad, albeit it was close, a split decision. But at plus 170, I kind of like Moraes.
I went back and forth on this fight too. Tim Means' losses are all legit. Neil Magny, Jorge Masvidal, Matt Brown,
Cowboy Oliveira.
Yeah, Cowboy Oliveira. Belal Muhammad in his last fight, in a fight that I thought Tim Means won. The announcers were acting like they thought Tim Means won. He loses a split decision to Belal Muhammad in a close fight. Interestingly enough, he's only had one 2-fight losing streak in his whole career, and that dates back to 2013. Since then, he has lost 4 times, and he's rebounded with a win every single time. All the guys he's beaten, we talked about how big of names they are. These are the fights Tim Means usually wins.
Yes, but at the same time, look at Sergio Moraes, outstanding on the ground and pretty good wrestling too. Like he's able to finish single legs. And Tim Means, when Cowboy Oliveira got him down 2 fights ago, Cowboy just had his way with him on the ground. I think Moraes is able to catch a leg or finish a single leg, and he gets on top at plus 170. Not a bad price.
I thought about Sergio Moraes too, and my problem was I kept going back to the Alex Garcia fight. And don't get me wrong, Sergio Moraes is much better, much slicker submissions than Alex Garcia, but Garcia was this big ground guy, and Means' height and striking gave him problems. And
Alex Garcia, a short guy though, Tim Means 6'2". I think Garcia's only like 5'9", but Moraes a little bit taller, he's got those long arms too. So I don't think Tim's size advantage will be that big of an advantage in this fight, considering the way Moraes fights. But yeah, you're right. This is a tough one. I've been going back and forth on it too, but at plus 170, lean a little more towards Moraes.
And how does Moraes handle being really knocked out for the first time? Because he got blasted by Kamaru Usman in his last fight, and sometimes people don't always react to being really completely KO'd. And we're going to have to see. Does it make him a little more tentative here? But I ended up having to pass on this one. I think it's going to be an interesting fight to watch, and it's a meaningful fight because the winner is likely to get a good fight out of this. So, important fight, fun fight. I just couldn't pull the trigger betting on it.
All right, next up, Alan Patrick fights Damir Hadzovic. And, I mean, Patrick minus 225 favorite, and he should be. He's 4-1 in the UFC. He's looked really good. They both share losses to Tasumov, who's just an absolute beast. He knocks people out. Hadzovic 1-1 in the UFC with a win over Held in the fight that he was totally losing. Held had it in the bag. He tried to dive in for that reverse, leg lock dive in, and he just lifted his front knee. It looked like an accident. Caught him perfectly on the chin. So I definitely expect Patrick to win this fight, but I don't want to lay the wood.
Yeah, and the other problem here for me with Patrick is he hasn't fought since September of 2016, and I don't like getting on guys with that much of inactivity. And he was never a killer anyway. He's always a guy who won decisions, ground you out, used his superior athleticism, really strong ground game. I just don't want to lay that price with a guy who's been off for 18 months.
I agree. But a price I am willing to lay is with Marlon Vera against Douglas Silva de Andrade. Marlon Vera, I was surprised to see, probably because of his record. He's got a 10-4 record. He's 5-3 in the UFC. Andrade, 24-2 record, but 2-2 in the UFC. I expected Vera to be minus 170, minus 185 favorite. He's only a minus 135 favorite, almost a pick'em. He's durable, never been stopped, and I like him in this fight.
And this is my biggest bet of the card. We're going to risk $135 to win $100 here on Marlon Vera. And I think he has all the advantages. Look, Douglas Silva de Andrade struggles with taller guys. We saw it in the Rob Font fight where Rob Font's height and reach gave Andrade all kinds of problems trying to get his power striking game going because he is a power striker, one big strike at a time. Vera is more of a combination striker. He strikes in combination to set up his ground game, which is really good. And look, we saw Vera go toe-to-toe with John Lineker in his last fight, and I thought he put forth a really impressive performance for his first time fighting a top 5 guy.
He got hit by Lineker
Sure.
and didn't get hurt.
That's
not
right.
even wobbled.
And he actually landed a couple of good shots on Lineker, and I think he'll be able to do it here. And if it goes to the ground, as we saw last fight with Andrade against Font, I think he's really vulnerable. Vera's a young guy who's fought most of his career in the UFC, had some learning curves, but he's starting to put it together now. 3-1 in his last 4, with the only loss, a decision loss to John Lineker. I love the upward trajectory of the 25-year-old here, Marlon Vera, and I'm going to go ahead and lay it at a premium.
Another great point that I didn't touch on, Vera's momentum is strong right now. And both me and Matt like Vera, his biggest bet, green light bulb, flash, take this bet. Easy money right here. If you had to say you had one favorite bet of the card, would this be it?
Well, it's the biggest bet of the card.
So there you have it.
Simple. We're going to risk the most money on it.
Biggest risk, best bet, Marlon Vera. All right, Joe Soto, Yuri Alcantara. Alcantara, he's burned both of us before, and now he's a smaller guy, 37 years old. The smaller guy's age faster. He hasn't looked too good as of late. But Joe Soto had a lot of hype coming in here in the UFC, but he's 3-4 overall in the UFC. And really, I could see this fight going either way.
And remember, wasn't his UFC debut a title shot versus TJ Dillashaw?
Yes.
Someone pulled out and Joe Soto came
stepped
in.
up. Yeah, this guy,
Like,
was,
and he
wasn't
was
he
like,
the Bellator champ or
something? He was champ somewhere, came in, got an immediate title shot in his UFC debut, and was like the biggest underdog that I've ever seen. I think Dillashaw was like minus 1,500 or something. Soto hung in there a little bit. Dillashaw dominated, ended up knocking him out in the 5th. And Soto's kind of been up and down. He's winning fights later, but against lesser guys like Ronnie Yaha and, not the most elite guys. Yuri Alcantara is so frustrating to me because this guy has top 5 level talent for a bantamweight. And at one point got into the top 5 and then lost a fight to Uriah Faber. And he just kind of has been, I don't know if he has the desire anymore. And now he's 0-2 in his last 2 fights, and the losses to Alejandro Perez and Brian Kelleher. And he was dominating Brian Kelleher. And the only reason the fight went to the ground is because he knocked him to the ground yet again with another punch. And went there and got caught in the guillotine.
Jiu-jitsu master gets choked out.
And he didn't even try to get out of it.
Yeah, pretty quick, yeah.
So look, I've lost money on Alcantara in situations where he's been talent-wise way better than his opponents and lost the fights. And so I don't know what to do with this one. I wanted to bet Uri, but I've lost enough money betting him when he's supposed to win. And to your point, at 37, does he even want to do it anymore?
Yeah.
Would anyone be surprised if after this fight he left his gloves in the octagon and called it a career?
Not at all. Not at all.
Because he's nowhere near contendership anymore.
No, yeah, drop 2 straight.
2 straight to unranked, unheralded guys.
Yeah, agree. But Joe Soto, too, he got submitted in 30 seconds in his last fight.
Yeah, Brett Johns with a calf slicer in 30 seconds.
See this.
When's the last time you saw a 30-second calf slicer?
I know. It takes 30 seconds to set that move up.
Yeah.
All right. Joseph Morales versus Stephan Figueredo. How do you say that? That's cool.
Figueredo. I think it's Figueredo.
Stephan Figueredo. Both guys undefeated. Someone's must go. This is the first fight on the Fight Pass prelims. Figueredo, 13-0. He's 2-0 in the UFC. Joseph Morales, 9-0. 1 in the UFC. Comes from Team Alpha Male. And right now, Morales is slight dog at plus 125. But I just got a hunch about him in this fight. I just like the way he fights. He has really good hands. Super dangerous submissions. Where Figueredo has a lot of stoppages on his record. But I don't know, for some reason, my hunch, everything's just screaming Morales in this fight. Someone's almost go. What do you think, Matt?
I don't love fading Brazilians in Brazil, just like I don't like fading Australians in Australia, because we see some questionable judges in both kind of continents there. So I don't really want to go against Figueredo here. They both come from good gyms. I think he fights for like Nava Uno or Black Zillions or something, and obviously Morales fights for Team Alpha Male here in Sacramento. So both good gyms, both undefeated. I think one's 9-0, one's 13-0. I got a chance to watch a couple of fights for both of them. They both look fast. They both seem like the ground game's good, defense and offensive wrestling. I think it's a really close fight, and if you think it's dead even, to your point, maybe you go with Morales. For the plus money, I couldn't pull the trigger on either side. I do think that Figueredo looked good in his 2 UFC fights, though. Those 2 performances, he actually looked good in both, too. Got wins, got a stoppage win in one, and looked fairly impressive in both. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yes. Well,
seems like a risky fight for both guys. Undefeated, young, up and coming. It seems like maybe you could have found different paths.
Yeah, right?
Like,
totally.
This early in their careers for both of them to be fighting each other.
Could have built up a little bit, But yeah, especially, I mean, this fight has both guys extremely talented. But usually the Fight Pass prelims, you don't see this kind of talent on. You kind of save these for the.
If in 2 years both guys were ranked, I don't think any of us would be surprised if they were both in the rankings. They're both really sound.
Not at all. UFC does not like people walking around their organization with those zeros. Wants to make sure one of those goes Saturday in Brazil. All right, the last play, Maia Stephenson, Joe Daddy's wife, against Poliana Fionna. And this one, Fionna about a 4-1 favorite, and I really couldn't pull the trigger.
No, this feels like a fight that Poliana's supposed to win. She's supposed to look good in
Brazil,
especially down there. The price got too high. I think it opened around 300. Maybe if you could have laid the 3, there could have been some value, but I certainly don't want to lay 400 to make 100 here, and but I don't really see how Stephenson wins either. I know her husband was a great fighter in his time. He ended up fading badly at the end, and best of luck to them as a family. They've both had to fight plenty of demons in their lives, with Joe especially, but I just don't see how she wins this fight, but I also don't want to lay 400 with the unknown commodity here.
Even though Stephenson's been hot as of late. Most of her losses were early in her career, but
yeah,
but
you're
you
know
right.
Most of her losses, so she was fighting in decent organizations. And I think she went like 1-4, and then she went and fought in some organization I hadn't even heard of. It was like
And then rattled off 5 straight.
5 straight in some organization. Yeah, and I couldn't. I looked at some of the records and the people she fought over there, and they were all cupcake city. So it's hard to know. Like, is Stephenson getting better, and that's why she's winning?
Yeah, but then when
the
it
level
came down,
of competition is terrible lately.
when she was on the Ultimate Fighter, she lost her first fight
Yeah,
on there.
right.
So then I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, well, hey, man, there's a lot of action to play on this card. That is it for us. UFC Fight Night, Belém, Brazil. You got some pretty good plays here. I hope your account's growing like ours. For Matthew Holt.
I'm gonna run down. I was gonna run down my plays because people always say at the end they forget them. Yeah.
Yes.
So recap of my plays. I got 40 to make 64 on Machida Anders going over 2.5 rounds, basically more than halfway the total distance, scheduled distance of the fight. I got 50 to make 68 on Pedro Munoz, 75 to make 50 on Michael Prazeres, 50 to make $115 plus 230 on Anthony Lionheart Smith, and I laid the $135 to make 100 on Marlon Vera versus Douglas Silva de Andrade.
All right. There you have it. I usually make my plays after the show, so
Okay.
I like most of those. We just disagreed on the Dodson Munoz. And I don't want to play too many favorites, so I need to get one of them off there. Because I like Prazeres at -150. I like Golem at -170. And I like Dodson at -155. So one of those plays has got to go. Other than that, me and Matt see eye to eye. And good luck. Hope your account's growing. See you next week on the final round.